So it's 8:05. I think we can start. Right, Rana, you good to go?
Yep.
All right, cool. All right. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all excited. Tonight, we're having another session of Product PH Community Talks. Tonight's our Product PH event, Community Talks, is a time to learn about some of the best practices in product management from people in the field. But more importantly, it's also a time for you, our guests and audience, to connect with fellow product people. Tonight, very excited to introduce to you four esteemed speakers who will give us a lot of insights and expertise about product product management, and everything around it. So for tonight's event, we actually have a specific topic which all of our speakers will speak about or speak to. So it's called Secrets to Managing Stakeholders. So yeah, before we get into the talks, I'd first like to ask everyone to just share into the chat where you're coming from. We're in the Philippines, so you can just send us a chat just to warm things up. Where are you? I'm from Quezon City, Pasig. Louis is from Pasig. Yanis from Japan. Oh, Mindoro. So Rizal. We have a lot of representation, right? A lot of people from Metro Manila. We also have Luke, who's from Melbourne. Great to have you here, Luke, and great to have you speak to us tonight. To speak for us tonight. All right, so that's a bit of an icebreaker, or just to warm you up. But more importantly, we're going to use a tool, and we want you to answer this question through our slide, though. So could you please scan this QR code so you can provide the answer to this question. What's the biggest challenge in stakeholder management for you? So you can take out your phone, or if Olivia, if you could share the link as well to the slide, though, if you have it, they could just click it and put up your answers on our slide. I'm just gonna read a few. There. So, way too many meetings, prioritization. What else? What are your challenges when it comes to stakeholders? Sometimes, or my example would be arbitrary decisions. Sometimes that's something that you struggle with as well. I think with product people, that's especially something that we struggle with. Everything's urgent, growing feature list, alignment, and syncing. So yeah, there are a lot. I'm sure our speakers will touch on that, and I'm sure you could get some insights or some tips and tricks that you could use in order to manage big egos or big personalities, right, with our stakeholders. So yeah, I hope you were able to scan the Slido or join the Slido, because we'll use that for the second part of the event, which is the lean coffee. So for tonight, we're going to have a series of lightning talks from our four speakers, and then we'll do a lean coffee session where we'll answer your answers, or the speakers or anyone in the group could actually give their answers for your questions. So just hop onto the Slido every time you have a question and add it into the Q&A poll. and we can review those later, and you can answer. So yeah, right. Hold on. So without further ado, I think we can start um, with our first speaker. Okay, so our first speaker is Pia Encarnacion, who's a product development manager from Ayana Business Solutions. I won't spoil anything, so Pia, um,
All right.
you can
Okay.
share your screen and introduce yourself.
All right. Hold on. Wait. Okay. Wait. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Pia. I'm currently a product manager at Ayana Business Solutions. I have nearly 6 years of both product and project management experience. My portfolio consists of different web applications, but right now I'm just focusing on e-commerce products. Uh, I'm also on Twitter. It's fairly new, but I talk about product management over there. So if you're interested in more of this and other topics, you can follow me there. My talk's going to be a bit different because I'm going to cover a very specific situation that may be challenging, especially if you're just starting out as a PM. So I'll be sharing my experiences about scope creeps, how I've dealt with them, and give some practical advice. So what is scope creep? It's essentially adding more work or tasks on top of the agreed upon development scope. Why does this happen? It could be caused by multiple factors, such as like poor planning and design. Maybe you'd failed to consider certain things, but found that they're still necessary. So it had to be added last minute during development or the ongoing sprint. But based on my experience, it's usually caused by other stakeholders that have very sudden feature requests. Sometimes these stakeholders are upper management. So there's this additional pressure to accommodate for them, which makes it hard to push back. Why is it risky? In my experience, when scope creep happens, these stakeholders will only provide like a high level or vague idea of the feature request and won't even allow us the time to define it further and adjust the timelines. So in my experience, it's always rushed. Since they're not defined properly, like how will the QA know what to test and capture all scenarios? And if it's not properly tested, some bugs can fall through the cracks. And what if something wasn't designed properly but was still released? That will definitely affect the user experience and might even cause a lot of dissatisfied users. And these sudden feature requests might also affect your current and future plans for your product. And then, I don't know, maybe for a time you'll be stuck trying to make it work instead of focusing on more important work. Common scenarios. Based on my experience, these are how I encounter them. First, the stakeholder will just simply request for the new features or tasks. I've had internal stakeholders simply go up to me in the office and then just drop the bomb on my desk. Other times, when I was working with clients, they just squeeze this in during our meetings with them, even though they know that development is already ongoing. So that's one. Another scenario that happened quite a few times already is when a stakeholder just goes straight to the developer and then makes them do the request. See, the developers that I've worked with, they kind of don't know how to push back or know why they should. So, like to them, as long as the request is possible, they'll do it without thinking about the risks. And that's how new features get into the current scope without mine nor the QA's knowledge. So, with that said, I'll share first how we could prevent scope creep. So, first, make sure there is a process for feedback gathering, change request management, feature request tracking, whatever you want to call it. Maybe it's already existing in your organization. If not, hopefully you're in a position to establish that immediately. Let's not wait for scope creep to happen before this is established. Next, communicate that process with these people you work with internally and externally. So what could that process look like? It could be through a shared document or email or like set meetings with all of the stakeholders to clearly define the scope requirements, timeline, other relevant details to your product. Or maybe the stakeholders can submit their feature requests via form or email. A tip you can do is you can look up templates of change request management forms online, decide what matters to you, what you should know, and what to track, modify it so it's relevant to your organization and product, and then use that for your process. You can always improve on this later on when you have a better understanding of what you need and what works. Lastly, and this is important, discuss with your product team what should happen when they are given a request directly. What happened then, actually until now, so my team members would rather have all of those requests coursed through me first because they know I can push back and like define the backlog before it even reaches them. It also allows the team to just like focus on their tasks. Personally, I actually prefer this, even though it seems like a daunting task to receive all of that, because I have to be aware of what my team is working on. But I understand that it might not be practical for certain PMs with like different roles and responsibilities. So essentially, you as the PM would need to provide like an entry point for these requests so that it can go through the normal process. But like, what if the stakeholder is insistent and doesn't comply to any of these? What if they consider the request as urgent and keep following up about it? So what should be done about it? Okay. First, actually, my initial response to that is always, I will get back to you on this. Um, um, I really don't recommend promising anything before you're even certain it's possible. So give yourself time to assess the request. This is where you could use your decision-making frameworks. Personally, I like the value versus complexity model. And then also ask yourself like a lot of questions. There are some written there. You could even ask some of these to the stakeholder or to your team. The more answers you get, the clearer your next course of action would be. Again, consult with your team because they can definitely provide more insights and perspectives to the situations. And then while you're working on all of this, you also have to think about how you're going to communicate this with the stakeholder. Like, what would convince them to agree with your strategy? So it might be a difficult conversation, but I don't think it's that scary if you have a solid assessment. Also consider alternatives. What can be done that can address the underlying issue of the request? So suggest those alternatives along with your assessment. But let's say after all that, scope creep still won in this situation. So what's next? Okay. Okay, so first, communicate all the implications and necessary adjustments. At this point, it's important to remind the stakeholders like that something's gotta give for us to accommodate their request. In my experience, I will still push for what's best for my team and the product. If that means we'll need more time or modify the scope or whatever else, as long as we can deliver a quality product. So these quotes here, I've used in real life situations. I would have already mentioned them when I shared my initial assessment, but it's still important to reiterate these things before execution because you never know, maybe they will learn that they shouldn't push for things last minute because plans will need to be changed. It's also super important to document everyone's buy-in of the change of plans. So this can be done through like a formal document or an email or another meeting with all the stakeholders. In my previous company, we worked with external clients. Oh, so we had this document where it contained like the costs and the scope of work, which the client had to sign before any work will be done. So when scope creep occurs, we would pause any work if it was ongoing. We would have meetings with the client to finalize those plans, and then we'd have to update that document and have them sign it again before we can continue. So if you have something like that with your stakeholders, update that and then share the updates with everyone involved. You can even include the date when it was finalized and the reasons for each change. I've done that and it really helps with backtracking. So point is the details about the changes are documented and the relevant people should be informed. Okay, so wrapping things up, actually, scope creep is adding additional work on top of the agreed upon scope, and sometimes these could come from your stakeholders. As the product manager, you should establish a process for change requests with your team and stakeholders. When the time comes to negotiate scope creep, suggest alternatives and communicate the situation and implications of the request. and update all of those involved and document their buy-in before execution. So that's actually all from me. And thanks for listening. And I hope you guys found that helpful.
Right. Thanks for the wonderful presentation, Pia. I'm sure everyone has struggled with the stakeholder asking for so many.
Yes.
It's out of the plan. So, yeah, guys.
Pia, can we do this? Sorry.
Guys, don't forget to follow Pia on Twitter and connect with her on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks for that. For our next speaker, we have Luke Grimstrup from inform.io. So Luke, you can share your screen.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
There you go. Perfect. Hey everyone. I'm going to talk to you guys about how product managers can manage stakeholders without going crazy. I'm Luke Grimstrup, founder of Inform.io and also head of product at Message Media based in Melbourne, Australia. And over the past 10 years, I've also worked in numerous product roles at places like Domain, which is Australia's #2 property site, and at Citrix in the US as well. So why is stakeholder management so important? I think the world's changed since COVID, and that remote work's here to stay. So you've got a whole bunch of organizations where they're starting to realize that stakeholder management is becoming more and more important, and so is internal communication. And how you structure that within the workplace is becoming more and more critical. And as people feel more and more distant from organizations now, leaders and teams have a need to feel informed of what's going on. And so there's an opportunity for product managers who are often aware of exactly what's going on and have access to all the data to interpret exactly what's going on and share their insights through storytelling. In a recent survey done by Product Plan, they found that 56% of product leaders feel dissatisfied with the current process of communicating product strategy and progress. So, you're thinking about best ways of managing stakeholders, you're probably thinking, maybe I'm not doing a good enough job, hence why we're all here tonight. There must be some tips and tricks out there, but actually, we're all in this together. Just over half of us feel dissatisfied with how we communicate those updates. And in another survey done by Pendo, they found that 70% of product managers view product delivery as the most important success factor ahead of revenue contribution, which kind of makes sense, right? Like as product managers, we often work so closely with customers, really understand their needs and problems. And so we genuinely want to see them solved through product delivery. And so to do that, we have to manage stakeholders both internally and sometimes externally too. And so I'm going to share with you guys 7 crucial insights that I've picked up along the way. And basically the key thing that I found is that keeping everyone on the same page is a force multiplier. When you can keep teams focused, it can build like trust and transparency. When you're not managing stakeholders effectively, you enter into a whole world of pain. Scope creep, people going straight to developers, as we just learned, and so being able to effectively manage those stakeholders, keep the teams focused, can really help as well. So tip number 1 really focuses on choosing the right communication channels, where every company, team, stakeholder group is really different. So it's up to you as a product manager to choose the right communication channels that you're going to use. And so this might be things like a regular meeting where you're sending out an email or a Slack update. Each have their pros and cons that you'll need to weigh up. For the second tip, depending on the nature of the project or the objective you're working on, you'd want to set expectations around how often you're going to communicate. And as a product manager, this is your chance to avoid even more recurring meetings from stacking up in your calendar, right? So if you're committing to sending an email once a week or a Slack update once a week, that's perfect. Which leads me to tip number 3: stick to that schedule. If you've set a routine around how often you're going to communicate your updates, it's really important that you stick to that schedule. So the best trick here that I've learned is to block out the time it takes to pull together the update in your calendar, so that you always have the time set aside to keep those stakeholders informed. And failure to stick to the schedule here will result in a new recurring meeting with stakeholders, which will end up consuming far more time overall in the preparation for the meeting, the actual meeting itself, and then any other things that may happen as a result of that meeting as well. So if you want to stay in the driver's seat, stick to that schedule, and send out those async updates. Tip number 4 comes down to really being open and transparent. And so if there are new changes or updates, aim to get your key stakeholders ready in advance. So this is really key, in particular before there are meetings where new information may be shared. So it's definitely in your best interest to make sure that everyone has time to digest information rather than share new information on the same meeting and expect a high quality decision to be made all within the same call. The next tip is really around taking advantage of all the tools that exist to make communication easier. There's so many tools out there that exist, yet we still default to meetings and jumping on Zoom calls. And as product managers, we're probably the busiest people within our organizations, often running back-to-back meetings all day, every day. And so we can kind of break that mold a little bit by using online tools to quickly and simply regain that time back in our calendars. Tip number 6 is really around addressing any questions or concerns as soon as they arise. So if a stakeholder does come to you with a question or a concern, you really want to jump on that right away. But then also you want to let others know that issues and concerns have come up. You want to answer the question around who will be addressing that concern, and also provide a rough ETA on when it will be addressed. And so you want to include the outcomes of all of these in your regular updates as well. And then tip number 7 is one that I personally love a lot, where you really want to celebrate the successes and learn from the failures. I think learning from the wins is really just as important as dissecting and learning from failure. Calling out the recent wins in your regular updates and sessions that you're having with stakeholders is a great way to balance everything out, right? It's not always doom and gloom. I tend to find that stakeholder updates and the stakeholder meetings can often be negatively focused, where you're often focused on outstanding actions, issues, and challenges, right? So really dig deep for those wins, open with those, because it can change the tone of the conversation in the meeting. And so shameless plug, Inform.io is a solution that makes stakeholder management easy. It's built for product managers that want to save time in compiling your progress reports, eliminating surprises, and streamlining progress reporting. And so it's a great way to send out like stakeholder emails across an organization that is all quite data driven. And that's it. So feel free to reach out to me via email or book time directly on my calendar. I'm more than happy to chat with anyone around the product management challenges that you're facing. Love to geek out over stakeholder management and any challenges that people have there. So Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, it's definitely important to maximize the tools for asynchronous communication, right? Right, especially as teams become more remote today, it poses different kinds of challenges. You would have your days interrupted with stakeholders asking for meetings. So really having an asynchronous tool would help mitigate that. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thank you again, Luke. So for our third speaker, we have Louis Bernardo. He is the Chief Product Officer of FDev. Louis, take it away.
Can you guys see my screen? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, good evening, everyone. So I'm Louis, right? Tonight I'll just share a few tips, right? I think same with everyone. I think there's a common, there's really common themes across all of our presentations, right? So, hey, I'm Louis. I'm the Chief Product Officer for FDev. So prior to joining FDev, I was in True Money. I helped scale that up as well as Gcash before the pandemic, right? In FDev, we build startups and startup teams. We also invest in startups. And we also help with digital transformation initiatives for Philinvest Group companies, right? So as I mentioned earlier, I'm just going to share a few tips that I've learned through personal experiences. And these are personal practices from just doing product for the past 10 years. First is I think you have to know your top three. Right. I think prioritization is always one of the critical aspects in the work that we do, but it's also one of the most difficult things to do, right? Priorities change all the time. But I think one of the misconceptions about product is like we're the gatekeeper, right? We're the ones that, stops things from getting built. But I really believe that prioritization is not product's responsibility, but the organization as a whole, right? And I think one of the things I learned is just priorities are just subjective, right? If you're the head of sales, your priorities are always sales related, but it doesn't mean that sales' problems are the most important things for the organization to handle at this time, right? That's why prioritization should not really exist or happen in a vacuum. It's should be collaborative, right? And it's important for the whole team to know what are the top three things and why they're the top three, right? And everyone's priorities should be tied to the team's objectives, right? It's our backlogs are never ending. It's I'm sure all of us have, like some tracker somewhere that's we don't even know how many, things are in there already. But by knowing your priorities, it makes it ensures that the things that you're working on contribute to the team's objectives. The other is like I never say no. I think the thing that you guys will hear all the time is people come up to you, and people will come up and will always and that will always happen. And I think one of the things I learned is I never say no. Right? It's whenever people ask new things from me, it's just I put it in that backlog, and it's never ending. It's a very, very long list, right? That product is always being asked to deliver. But when people come up to me and say, "Hey, Louis, like, build this for me, and can it be tomorrow?" I always ask them, is this part of the top three? Does it contribute to the current objectives of what we want to do as a group, right? I also share with them like what the team is working on and kind of what's coming up ahead, right? If the stakeholder really feels that it's like whatever they're asking for should be top of the list, I bring it up in the next roadmap review, and I ask them that to present why it should be higher in priority, right? If you really feel strongly about something, they should fight for it, right? Because again, prioritization is not product's responsibility, it's the group's responsibility, right? And all of our deliverables are asks from some stakeholder somewhere, right? And product's job is to deliver, it's not to say no, right? Again, like let the group, tell head of sales that, like we can build that later, right? I don't want to be that guy. One-on-ones, right? It's I speak with a lot of product managers, and I think one of the things that is not utilized enough are one-on-ones. And I think, a big part of product is knowing how to manage your stakeholders, and a big part of product is knowing how to manage up, right? If you don't have one-on-ones with your boss, I would say demand it. Like you should really ask for one, especially if you're doing remote work, right? If your boss doesn't want a one-on-one, ask his boss for a one-on-one. I think it's really everyone's right as an employee, to have those one-on-ones. And in product, the work moves really fast. Like changes come fast, right? And having these one-on-ones like helps to ensure that you're working on the right things. Your boss or whoever that is knows you're working on the right things. And they'll also be aware if there's something that might derail you from working on the right things, right? It's really the perfect time, to let your boss know, as Luke mentioned, it's hey, head of sales is asking for this new thing. He believes it should be in the top 3. We're going to bring it up in the next roadmap review, right? No one likes surprises, right? No one likes being caught off guard. So these one-on-ones is really a great forum to bring up these concerns, right? And some practical advice, I would say, like, have your one-on-ones on a Monday or a Tuesday, right? Before that person's meeting starts. So if their day starts at 9 a.m., have it at 8:30, with coffee. Like talk to them while they're fresh and, before they get buried by their day-to-day stuff, right? And do it consistently. I think a lot of the things that work for me as product is really routine, like Luke mentioned. I'm very disciplined about blocking off time in my calendar for very specific stuff, right? And that applies as well for my one-on-ones, right? If your organization changes priorities frequently, like set weekly or even like bi-weekly one-on-ones to make sure that these discussions happen, and like make sure to get it on their calendars, right? And it's a recurring meeting. Like the routine is important. If there are no significant changes, right, from your last discussion, just send it over chat, like Slack, whatever, right? Share a screenshot, tell them be very clear. Hey, nothing has changed since our last discussion. This is what we talked about last time. Share a screenshot of whatever tracker you use, whatever roadmap you have. And not only are they updated, you did them of a favor by saving them 30 minutes, of another meeting. But again, those one-on-ones are key, right? And again, in product, right, relationships are really key. Like you're working with all types of stakeholders, you're managing up, but you're also managing relationships, I would say, in all directions, right? Product is really a cross-functional role where you're influencing a lot of people that are not really direct reports to you. And how you speak with your CEO, will differ from how you speak with a peer, a customer, your engineers, right? And your relationships affect how they'll receive the message you're delivering. And having good relationships with internal stakeholders makes your life easier when things aren't going well, right? And I think with product, we really get paid to solve problems or to deal with problems, right? And having good relationships just makes that tough part of the job a little bit easier, right? And when you have with good relationships, when you have to ask the engineers, right, to stretch a little bit, for this current sprint, it's a little bit easier. Pizza makes it a little bit easier before the pandemic. If something gets deprioritized for whatever reason, delivering the bad news to that stakeholder is a little easier, when you have a good relationship with them. When there's a production issue, right, and it's impacting your revenue, and you have to tell the team, it becomes easier, right? And the work relationships really, it's glued together by the interactions that you have, between meetings and work. So like really find that common ground with the people you work with. It makes the tough times, a little bit easier. So for the people that go to the office now, grab that cup of coffee, share whatever food. I play Mobile Legends with my engineers and QA. And by having that common ground, it makes my life a little easier. And really, relationships are key, right? Relationships also transcend your employer. So again, thanks for letting me share. Look for me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect. And shameless plug, if you guys are looking for work or engineers looking for work, hit me up. I'd love to have a chat. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Louis. Relationship is key, especially in this remote world, right? So we're all remote now, but hope we're building our relationship now. So thanks for those practical tips. I'm sure everyone could use that. Even though I'm not a product manager, I'm gonna ask for one-on-ones now with my boss. All right. So for our next speaker, he is a fellow workshopper, like I am. We have Leo Laliana from previously On-Off Group. Leo, take it away.
Thanks, Abel. And good evening, guys. Thank you for this opportunity to share some of my learning so far in the product sphere, product world. And I feel like this is, somehow I feel like this is a therapy session for all of us here. Just hearing the thoughts of the previous speakers. And I love to see the chat light up as well. Can I just quickly ask you guys some questions, really easy to answer. How are you guys feeling today? How are you? Let me type it in. How are you feeling tonight? In one word. Let me just see. Let's do a quick temp check on the chat box here. How are you feeling tonight? Even if you can type it in English or Tagalog, it's really up to you. For me, I'm feeling hungry. It's dinner time, and I'm if you haven't had your dinner yet, I'm the one keeping you from your dinner since I'm the last speaker. Refreshed, Dadmir said. Janae, relaxed. Wow, a lot of you are relaxed. Abel is curious. Same as I am. I'm also curious to hear about your thoughts later, for our activity. Sige, let's thanks for sharing. All right, let's without further ado, let's begin. So for me, this is my title. I love it. On herding cats. This is the thing that I learned in one of our clients told me this. So credits to that person. But the topic is mainly, it's about hitting healthy deadlines. I'll tell you more about the herding cats later. Okay, so stay tuned for that. So of course, there's a cat right there. All right. So quick hello. I'm Leo Laliana. So teams find it hard to align on many things, just like what we're talking about right now. Just features, the company goals. It's a lot of things. So for me, the way I help teams is that I use design thinking and design sprint workshops. If you guys are familiar with that, then that's good, because here in the Philippines, it's not so much, popular as some of the methodologies that we're using in our big companies. So I'd love to chat if you guys are familiar with design thinking and design sprints. So I'm going to share with you some practical tips, of course. That's the purpose of our talk right now. The previous speakers already given you a lot of things, so I don't want to bore you with more. So I'm just going to give you 3. Okay, so the first one here is, of course, you have to understand why. Okay, and next is agreeing on priorities. Some of the speakers already touched upon this one. Number three, lastly, you need to clarify your boundaries. But first, before I go, into detail on these three things, let's first do a quick definition of terms. Stakeholders can also be your beneficiaries. This could also be your clients, your customers, and some people don't think about their coworkers as well. When you're building products, you're also thinking about your coworkers. How would they, how would they receive the updates? How would they receive the changes that you guys are making? If you're working on the dev side, and if you're a product manager, of course, your clients would be your bosses, your what we call the HIPPO, HIPPO. You guys know the HIPPO. HIPPO is it's not the animal, although it kills. It's the biggest killer of ideas. HIPPO. It's the highest paid person in the room. It's the highest paid person something. Forgot the O. Can you help me with the O if you get the chance to Google that? But it's the highest paid person opinion. There you go. Thank you, Leona. Yes, that's it. Highest paid person's opinion. That's the biggest killer of all ideas. But bonus here is that they are all human. Okay, we can talk to them. We can build relationships with them, just like what Louis mentioned. And priorities are just there to give you guys something to work towards. But it's manageable. We can manage that. So that's why the title of my talk right now for tonight is herding cats. Cats are also the hippos. Cats are also the product managers of different departments, the different development teams as well, and also the different bosses for different departments. Have you tried herding cats before? I'm sure most of you already have, but you're not aware that they're cats. Well, basically, it's impossible. You can't herd cats. It's just about managing expectations from different people and different situations. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So let's begin. First one here is understanding the why. Okay. But first, we begin with the quote right here. So work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. You guys have heard of this law before, I believe. So, it's called the Parkinson's law. Deadlines are there just so we can make things happen. It's important that we manage expectations so that we can make stuff and put them into production, and so that we can learn as soon as we can, from the market, from our clients, from our users. But deadlines are important. I love deadlines. That's why I was able to make this presentation, because of the deadline that Livia gave me. So thank you for that, Livia. So moving on now. Number one, understand the why. In design thinking, we start with empathy. We start with understanding our users, understanding our clients, understanding our teammates as well. And we do this by really asking them questions, really asking them clarifying questions, digging deep. I believe some of the speakers here already touched upon this. You really have to understand, why are we building this? It's not just about being the first one to ship it, or a feature a product, or be innovative, quote unquote, but really to solve real human problems. Okay, because it's hard if you're one of the developers and you don't know why you're doing this thing, then what's the point, right? So this is a no-brainer if you think about it, but people forget. That's why we're here to always remind them that it's about being able to empathize with your coworkers, empathize with your users as well. Okay, and make sure that you share the same goals. Okay? So that's tip number one for you. And feel free to take notes, also take screenshots. but I'll give you a copy of my slides, hopefully, after this talk, if you guys need a reference in the future. My second tip would be this one. You should agree on priorities. So Louis mentioned about top 3 priorities, and look here, chimed in on the chat room and the chat box that sometimes it's really hard to pick the top 3. Yes, that is true, because of different goals and different, urgent matters that we feel that is urgent. But sometimes it's just, uh, what's the goal? What are we trying to achieve here? It's just about asking really the question and be very consistent in learning about it. So you have to agree on priorities because, of course, you are not a superhero. So guys, if you feel that you are superheroes, well, flash use, you're not. It's we're for most of us, we only have like around 3 to 4 hours of productive time per day. Okay, that's the reality, and we have to tend to our kids. Some of us we have families. We have to tend to our, to our house, meet our chores and do all sorts of our crazy hobbies that we have, So we really have to focus on the most important things. You have to communicate that with your clients. Number 3 here, you have to clarify your boundaries. I believe this is where Louis and I have this a different take on this. He mentioned earlier, and sorry, Louis, you mentioned earlier that you never say no. I say saying no is the ultimate productivity hack. I always say no to most things, because we in also in a way that you're not offending anyone. It's not about just like saying no, 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 no. It's just you have to understand where they're coming from first, and that is also one of the messages of the Louis shared earlier. So clarify your boundaries. For me, a quick way to do this is that you tell your clients or you tell your bosses that you only have to work or you're going to work for until 5 p.m. And then after that, you're not going to reply. If your boss says, well, that's good, then congratulations. If he or she said that you have a lot of things to do, then try to push back. It's the only way to do it, and be firm. The idea here, the big idea here, and I'm about to end my talk here. So you have to work with your clients and not just for them. Okay? Work with your clients and not just for them. You have to be comfortable in asking questions, raising potential hurdles, and of course, challenging assumptions, because some of them are just based on, assumptions. Okay? So quickly, let's recap. First, number 1, you have to understand. You have to start with empathy and keep an open mind. And if you need some references, you can use the 5 whys technique to identify the root cause. It's really effective for us. Number 2 is prioritize. The deadlines and priorities are there for us to be able to ship it, and get some feedback as soon as we can. So you can do this by using impact effort matrix, impact visibility matrix, people call it many names. But my favorite is Moscow prioritization. You can just look this up. I really like this and highly recommend this. Lastly, you need to clarify. We cannot do everything. You need to quantify difficulty levels if you can, per task, so that you can minimize, the what the hell moments, with your team and also with your bosses. So lastly, let me just leave you with this quote. The most dangerous phrase in any language is, we've always done it this way. Okay? It's important that you try new things. If you haven't tried some of the tips here in the past, that we've shared, please do try it. Try it for a week. Don't try it for one time or two times only. Just try it for a week, and maybe talk to your boss about it, that maybe you've heard this Leo guy, talk about this and you're just trying it out, as an experiment. Right? And I wish you good luck. So thank you guys. If you can say hi to me on LinkedIn, I'd really appreciate it. So good luck on crushing those deadlines and herding those cats.